O tuatahi he mihi aroha kia koe Judy mo te karakia o te hui nei. Nō reira e te iwi ka tū te pītongatonga o hukarangi kia mihi atu ki o koutou maunga tapu. Tēnā koutou, tēnā tātou katoa. Ko Angie Tangaere wau no te taira whiti ko au te kaitohu tangata whenua of the Auckland Co-Design Lab. Thank you very much for having us online today, e te whānau. I'm Angie and I'm the Director Tangata Whenua of the Auckland Co-Design Lab, and I'm joined by Anne-Marie, who I'm going to ask, would you like to introduce yourself now, Anne-Marie? No, she'll introduce herself when she's sharing her amazing her mahi. So it's a real privilege to be on the line with you all this afternoon. What we'd like to do this afternoon is we'd like to share how we've been drawing from Hautū Waka as an Indigenous navigation system for learning and complexity and system change. And so I was going to talk a little bit about that framework and about who we are as a lab, and then we were going to get you to use the framework. And then Anne-Marie is going to share some of her amazing mahi and how our amazing rangatahi innovators have been using Hautū Waka in their mahi. So that's the format of today. So I'll just start by saying we wouldn't in no way say we're experts in system change or any subject matter for that for that matter. But what we do want to share with you is what we're learning, and we share that in the spirit of better outcomes for our whānau. And what I also want to say is that what you're about to hear is practice-based evidence that has been produced by our team. So I want to acknowledge the Southern Initiative and our other members of the co-design, the Auckland Co-Design team, who have been contributing to this practice, but particularly want to acknowledge Matua Ririata Makiha and Roimata Taniwha Pa'o and Ayla Hoita, who have been evolving a system change practice that's based or largely drawn from Hautū Waka. So just want to acknowledge their expertise. But now I guess I'll get it. This time's going to go really quick, team, because we've been very ambitious about what we're trying to do with you guys in this 1 hour. Just before I start, if you can get your medal board link open now, that'll be good, because we're going to do something in the medal board in a little bit. So if you're on a laptop and you can, I'm encouraging you to open the medal board link now. You can go to the next one. Thanks, Stephen. I would describe the Auckland Co-Design Lab as an innovation and a learning platform. We're in a very, very privileged position to be working with and alongside whānau in South Auckland to support spaces for whānau-led innovation that's geared towards wellbeing in place. And we're working inside of system across central government to understand what are the capabilities and the conditions that need to be grown for system change. So we're nested inside of Auckland Council, but we're working alongside whānau in South Auckland and across the system. And our work is really to champion and enable social and economic innovation for more equitable outcomes for our whānau. That's probably enough about us. Can you go to the next one? Thanks, Stephen. And I know many of you online will empathize here that what we know is if we keep doing what we're doing right now, if we keep sustaining the system responses we have, we're not just going to get the same, we're going to get worse in terms of outcomes for whānau. So we can't be continuing to do what we're doing right now. So there's an urgent imperative for change, and it's critical that we innovate. It's critical to get equitable outcomes for whānau, and it's critical for the planet. And what we know is if we draw from Indigenous knowledge systems, these help us to be and do differently, and they give us different starting points. And that's why we are really committed to mātauranga-led approaches for systems change. Can you go to the next one? Thanks, Stephen. So we need to create some system shifts, conditions that will help us move away from what we're doing right now, because we can't continue BAU if we want different results. And you'll recognize lots of these, but we do know that where we're trying to shift from, and we do know where we want to shift to, but a lot of the time we don't know how. And systems are built to protect themselves, and they're self-legitimizing. So it's really important that we think about what's the fundamental or radical system change that's required for us to reimagine how we're supporting whānau in place for what matters to them. And what we are learning is that mātauranga-led and Indigenous-led approaches to system change, they help us to start and understand how we can support these shifts, because they're helping us be and do differently. You can pop to the next one. You can keep going until the arrows come up. Thanks, Stephen. So one of the things that we're really passionate about is, if we're needing to support system change for better outcomes for whānau, there's two really important principles in our work that drive our practice. One is this is ultimately going to be about how we share power and control, and how we're shifting where the locus of power and control is, and how we're reverse engineering some of our systems for change. And for me, that means really thinking hard about how we grow the conditions, the capabilities to collapse the distance between centralised power and whānau who are experiencing the most inequity. So that's we're either collapsing the distance in the way that we're working, or we're reverse engineering the system, which is currently sort of driving responses from centralised power out into community. And what we're passionate about is understanding how mātauranga-led approaches help us reverse engineer that, and how power can sit in communities with whānau, and how whānau innovation drives the change from place. Can you pop to the next one, please? Thanks, Stephen. Well, that sounds great, but it's all a bit harder than what people think, isn't it? Everybody wants to innovate. Everybody wants a different outcome for whānau. Everybody wants to reimagine our systems, but it turns out it's much harder to do, isn't it? And what we're learning is that Indigenous systems are so powerful, because they help you start and be in a different way, and that helps us to understand the how of the system shifts. And I've just got this awesome quote from Professor Rangi Matamua. And I don't know if you guys remember that, but there was some controversy where some academics from Auckland University challenged mātauranga Māori as being a scientific knowledge system. And what's really important to note, is that our Indigenous knowledge system have thousands of years of observations and evidence gathering that helps us to understand the environment in a different way, each other in a different way, and has more of a focus on rhythm, space, and connection. And that really helps us to think and do differently, and that's what we need to be doing if we're thinking about how we move towards system change. Can you go to the next one, Stephen? One of the criticisms at that time was the system itself is underpinned by values. And I just want to share with you guys, I think that is like our superpower. Values-led ways of or approaches towards system change. So that's how we conceptualize the power of Indigenous and mātauranga knowledge systems, and helping us to grapple with these really complex challenges and these really institutionalized systems that have embedded ideologies at the heart of them. So I'm going to talk a little bit now to the phases of Hautū Waka, and what I'll say about this is, and the stuff's in the information's in the meta board too, is I'm on slide 9, if you can go there, Stephen. We're going to do a pipi dive. That's what Matua Ririata calls it. So we're just going to share with you how we've drawn on the phases of Hautū Waka to help us navigate differently in our work, in our system change work. There's some slides on the meta board as well, if you want to look at those. And so here's the phases, and it looks like it's a linear process, but it's not. And the power of Hautū Waka is that it emphasizes the criticality of connection or relationship, space and rhythm in this type of work. So it's helping us to move away from a programming, intervention, logic approach to simplifying complex issues or challenges, and it's helping us to think about a different way of being when you are working with these challenges in system. And so the first phase is whakaritiriti, and that's really how you're getting ready. Who are you going to go on the journey with? Who are you taking on the journey to navigate the expanse of the world or the unknown? What do you need? Who do you take with you? But this phase really helps me in some of our complexity work to think about, what do I stop doing? So it's not just what do I need to take into the work and who do I need to go in there with, but it really helps me to understand what should I not do anymore. So that is really stopping the BAU stuff, right? And saying, I've got to let go of some stuff to do some new stuff. I've got to look at my own practice, my own capabilities, things that are not helping hold the complexity of the work, and I can leave them behind, and I know what I have to take forward. The second phase is te rapunga. This is a really critical phase in complexity and change work, because te rapunga is really when you're circling in the unknown or the potential. So it's when you know you've got a really complex challenge or issue, or you're doing this really hard change work, but you're not sure what the answer is, and you just need to wait for a little bit. And this is a really cognitively uncomfortable space for most of us, because we want to know the answer. We want to know the process to get to the answer. We want to know the solution. But the issue is that there's no innovation in certainty. There's no potential in certainty. So this phase helps us to be attuned to the power and the necessity of waiting to see what needs to surface, what's the potential, what needs to emerge, rather than to jumping through to the next step and trying to solve the problems. What we know from this phase in the work is that it can be really uncomfortable for people, and so the way you're in relationship with who you're working with, the way that you're attuning to your environment, the way that you are with yourself is really important to hold you in this uncertainty while the potential surfaces. The next phase is called te kitinga, and that's when you start to see some things that might help. You start to see some tohu. You notice some things that are showing you where you might go next, and you follow those tohu. This phase is really important for us because what it encourages us to do is start to notice different things, start to attune to different things. So don't rely heavily on the measures that we already have. Don't rely heavily on the indicators, because all of the things that are sitting in our system right now, there's power in how you identify indicators and measurements, and they are underpinned by a particular perspective and ideology. For the most part, it is changing. So what this helps us to do is to attune to where we are in the work and to start to notice different things. The next phase is te whāinga. So you've identified something new, and now you're digging deeper to understand it. You're exploring it. you're going a little bit further out to see what you can see. You're learning more about that tohu that you've just cited. Te whiwhinga is you've understood that tohu now. You've done enough work to know this is something that has potential for us to be able to do or to use, and you've got it and you understand it, and you are implementing in our work. You're starting to implement that live learning into system change immediately, so you're integrating it straight into the work. And te rawinga is you've achieved the journey, or you've achieved what you've set out to do, and you're reflecting on it and you're celebrating it. Te rawinga is different. It's specific to any one of the pieces of work that you're doing or the particular context. It's different for everybody. And for us, te rawinga is we have now learned enough to create enough system change for impact. We've now been able to create the conditions and the capabilities to support equitable outcomes for whānau in Aotearoa. So that te rawinga is a little way away yet, but we keep working towards it. So those are the phases. This is a lot of information. It's in the meta board. You'll get the slides. But also in a moment, Anne-Marie will give you a case study using the phases, so that will make it a little bit more concrete. So now we're going to take a moment to do an exercise, and we can do it on the board. I'm wondering if, Stephen, you can screen share the board, or I will, so people can see where we are and what we're doing. So what we're going to do in the middle board is we've set up Hautū Waka with some post-its underneath it. What we're going to ask you to do is to take a minute to think about a piece of work that you're doing, or a particular challenge, or even how you're just feeling in the work. And we're going to get you to take one of the green post-its underneath the board, write your name in the project, and then place it somewhere on Hautū Waka in terms of which of the phases you're resonating with at the moment. When you hear about the phases and you think about your work, there's no wrong or right answer. This is just about you having a go at thinking through the lens of the phases. I'll just say another thing. Hautū Waka is not linear like this, it's circular. And you can be in te whiwhinga and then you can track right back to te rapinga. So it doesn't look like it looks like it's sequential here, but it's not. They're phasing. So I'll just point that out as you go to use it. But if you could just put your name on the green post-it and the piece of work or the challenge that you're thinking about, and then post it on the up on the Hautū Waka board, that would be awesome. And people are already doing it. Look at you guys go. We were going to ask for people to share some whakaaro, but I'm just really mindful of time, and the best part of the kōrero is coming up now, because it's Anne-Marie talking about the rangatahi-led mahi that she's facilitated. So I think we'll just wait to the Q&A, or if you've got some whakaaro that you really want to share, just pop it in the pop it into the chat there. Oh, I'd just like to say a big mahi to the tokona te raki whānau. I think I can see some of you online. It's lovely to see you. You should get those guys to talk to you about system change. They're real experts. So I'll just hand it over to Anne-Marie. I'm not sure if Anne-Marie wants Stephen to share the slides. Oh, kapai. Stephen's already on top. So over to you, Anne-Marie. I'm really lucky to work with Anne-Marie. She's really awesome. So I'd like to hear what she's been up to too. Kia ora, Anne-Marie.
Kia ora, Angie, and ahi Māori. Ngā mihi o te wiki o te reo Māori. I'm very privileged to be sharing a bit of this mahi with you. And if anyone has any questions, because it's such a short period of time, feel free, we'll be able to share and you can get in contact with us. So what I'm going to explain a little bit is how we've applied Hautū Waka in some mahi we've been doing with rangatahi. And so during COVID, we noticed that young people were doing it really tough. All those observation people were saying about young people leaving school early to help their whānau, household income. We'd also been doing quite a bit of work in place around understanding the lived experience of education in Manurewa. And so in this time of COVID, we sort of were like, oh, is there something that we could do around how we can keep young people attached to learning? And we thought, well, one way we could do this is by using methodologies that we use at the Co-Design Lab and in the Southern Initiative. And so we started a prototype, which was, okay, let's work with some young people who are sort of in that just leaving school. So we thought also, because it was really important because we were operating in Manurewa, that if we were going to build their skills, which was around communication, creativity and collaboration and critical thinking, which all come through design, it was really important that we actually used Indigenous frameworks. So I thought so what I'll do is quickly touch on the 3 ways that we were using Hautū Waka. So 3-level type of youth lab, hang tai whanga rangatahi. Another one was for the rangatahi themselves on their personal journeys. And then the 3rd way was on the actual design challenges or the design questions that they were working on. The first, Steve, if you could go back, just keep on the other slide until I tell you, that'd be awesome. So the first way was actually developing a youth lab from the prototype. It was for about 12 weeks into what became Tai Whanga Rangatahi. And so we actually, as a team, were using Hautū Waka to think about. We were in Te Rāpinga when we sort of set up this idea of a youth lab, and it was an experiment of 12 weeks. We looked at, okay, who do we need, and whakarite with what sort of skills do we need alongside our design, whether it was pastoral care, youth development experience, the mix of mātauranga and other Pasifika knowledge in the team, and also a willing partner, which is Manurewa High, where the students came from. And we didn't really know, we knew there was potential, but we didn't really know what we were going to uncover. So we actually worked with them using Hautū Waka in design, and we got them working on a real world project. So they were working on a council regeneration project. It was restoring the mauri of an awa in our area in Tamaki Makaurau. And yeah, so they they were interviewing other rangatahi, they were interviewing, just members of their community, as well as adults and members of their whānau and staff. And what we realised, like looking for tohu in doing this work, we realised that there seemed to be actually quite a bit of demand for authentic rangatahi voice and ideas from, say, the public sector. And we knew that sort of council family partners that we're working with, they really loved the fact that these rangatahi were able to actually share ideas and interview harder to reach, to look at the process, what's working, where's the potential for influencing the system, I guess. And we got to Te Rāwinga, which was the 12 weeks had been successful, like noticing what was going on for the rangatahi themselves. And so we decided to continue, but we sort of reached Te Rāwinga and then we started again. And we actually made it a more permanent thing, and some of those young people were contracted for 1.5 years and really got into sort of deeper, more involved work and looking at who the potential clients could be, which, you know, several ministries and actually local government. So that was the first level, like for us as a team, like looking at what the youth lab and Tai Whangarangatahi developing into a bigger thing. And then we also used it for the rangatahi themselves. It's actually quite a useful tool for them personally to think about their personal journeys, you know, and they were sort of, you know, thinking about, well, what's their te rawanga for themselves? And, you know, at different points, we were asking them where they felt they were on their journey. So that's another way that we used it. And then the third was on the actual, what I call the design challenges or the wicked problem that we were asking them to work on. And if Stephen, Maestro could change slides. One of the big design challenges that they spent their time working on was in the end about 1 year, was this question about how might we increase the number of Māori and Pasifika rangatahi into high value green and tech career pathways. It's quite a mouthful. That big question was about some systems change, just noticing that in those areas we have got a very low participation of Māori and Pasifika in some of those careers. So the rangatahi actually used Hautū Waka to help them through this, to answer this question. And yeah, and so sorry, if you could change again, Stephen. This maps out, you know, in a way like the work, the mahi that they did in the phases. But again, it makes it look a little bit too linear, but it isn't. So a lot of times you do sort of circle back. Sometimes you'll try something, you look for a tohu, you go deep dive, you know, into te whāinga, and then you circle back. So, but this kind of shows the process that they did on that particular question about how might we increase the number of Māori and Pasifika rangatahi in green and tech career pathways. And I'm sort of happy to say that they did reach a te rawanga, which is, if you could go to the next slide, kura of the future. So this was the big concept that came out of that journey using Hautū Waka. The rangatahi, you know, engaged with lots of other rangatahi, and it was amazing just across public sector and industry got behind them and participating in quite a few wānanga about and came up with this vision about what some concrete ideas. And so under Kura of the Future, there's like 5 concepts, and that's what they are. We've already sort of started using those ideas. Their te rawanga for the rangatahi was, well, we'd really like some people to hear about this idea and maybe take some of these ideas on board, which we are sort of doing at the moment. And I guess just very quickly, like a general reflection is they really related to Hautū Waka. And it was, yeah, I think that flexibility of working this way, and they really connected with it, coming from Tamaki ki te tonga. So, and for me as someone who has been involved in quite a few co-design, more traditional co-design processes, it's very rarely the sort of the 4 diamonds or 2 diamonds that people might traditionally use in systems work even. It's too linear, and it doesn't involve really the idea of really attuning, as Angie was saying earlier, in navigation. So that's a little road trip of how we used it, the 3 levels, and yeah, I'll just pass the rako back to Ange.
Oh, thanks, Anne-Marie. Incredible bunch of rangatahi innovators too. I wish you could meet them. Just incredible human beings. Was like, it just gives you such heart. I just keep saying to them, keep going so I can retire next year. They're much better at this stuff than me, so I was like, so ka pai. Stephen, would you mind just sharing the very last slide? I've just popped one in there because I'm really nervous that we've we've misled you about the nature of Hautū Waka. It really looks like this. Stephen will show you I think there's a slide in there now. After that one. Yeah, it looks like this. Like you go to one phase and you think, oh no, I've got to go back to blah, or I've got to go forward and then I've got to come back. So yeah, just to let you know, the phasing makes it look like a simple sequential journey, but it's not. It's designed to help you hold all of the complexity that we're all working and to create system change or better outcomes.